The Halloween app? I should have known something was wrong when the app appeared on my phone without me downloading it. A simple orange icon with a black pumpkin, called Trick or Treat. But I was desperate for friends, and it promised to help me find the perfect Halloween party. My name's Jake, and I'm 19, a sophomore at Westfield College in Oregon. I'm the guy who eats lunch alone, studies in the back corner of the library, and whose roommate pretends I don't exist. I've always been awkward. The kid who tried too hard, said the wrong things, made people uncomfortable without meaning to. My mom calls it social anxiety, but I just call it being me. It was October 28th when I first noticed the app. I was scrolling through my phone in my dorm room, avoiding another night of Netflix alone, when there it was. Right on my home screen, like it had always been there. When I tapped it, a cheerful voice greeted me through my earbuds. Welcome to Trick or Treat. Find your perfect Halloween experience. The interface was simple. Just a map of campus with glowing orange dots scattered around. Each dot represented a Halloween party or event. What made it special was the rating system, but not for the parties. It rated how much each party would change your social life. Green dots meant mild improvement. Yellow meant significant change. Red meant life-changing experience. I saw 3 red dots on campus. The biggest one was at the old Sigma Phi house, the coolest fraternity on campus. These were the guys I'd dreamed of hanging out with since freshman year. The app's voice chimed again. Your perfect match is at 1247 Greek Row. Costume recommended. Classic movie monster. Arrival time. 11:47 p.m. exactly. That specific timing seemed weird, but I was desperate. I'd spent 2 years invisible. Maybe this was my chance. I rushed to the campus costume shop that Tuesday afternoon. The elderly clerk, Mrs. Chen, looked concerned when I asked about classic monster costumes. All rented out except one, she said, pointing to a corner display. But nobody ever wants that one. It was a werewolf costume, but not the fun kind. The mask looked disturbingly real. Fur matted and yellowed, eyes that seemed to track movement, teeth that were sharp metal instead of plastic. The hands were more like claws, and the whole thing smelled musty, like wet dog. How much? I asked. Free, she said quietly. Just bring it back in good condition. If you can. That should have been my first warning. Halloween night arrived gray and drizzly. I put on the costume around 11 p.m. and immediately felt different, stronger, more confident. The mask fit perfectly, like it was made for me. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. For the first time in years, I looked cool. The app guided me to the Sigma Phi house at exactly 11:47 p.m. The party was in full swing. Bass thumping, colored lights flashing through the windows, students in costumes, laughing on the front lawn. I'd never been invited to anything like this, but when I walked up to the door, something strange happened. The bouncer, a massive guy dressed as a vampire, looked at my costume and stepped aside without asking for my name. Inside, people turned to stare at me. Not with the usual discomfort, but with something else. Fear. Respect? Dude. Sick costume, said Brad Morrison, the fraternity president who'd never acknowledged my existence. You look incredibly realistic. The night became a blur of everything I'd always wanted. People laughed at my jokes. Girls asked for my number. Guys wanted to hang out. I felt like I was finally living. Around 2 a.m., someone suggested we play a game. Truth or dare, but Halloween style, explained Chloe, a girl from my chemistry class who'd never looked at me before tonight. The app chooses the dare. Everyone pulled out their phones. They all had the Trick or Treat app too, though none of them remembered downloading it either. We sat in a circle in the basement, the lights dimmed to just candles flickering on the tables. The app selected me first. "Jake Morrison," the voice announced. "Your dare. Show everyone who you really are." I laughed. "That's easy." I reached up to remove my werewolf mask. It wouldn't come off. I pulled harder, my claws scraping at the edges, but the mask seemed fused to my face. The room went quiet. "Very funny, Jake," Brad said nervously. "You can stop now." But I couldn't stop. The mask wasn't just stuck. It was becoming part of me. I could feel the fur pushing through my real skin, my teeth sharpening, my hands growing larger inside the costume claws. "This isn't a costume," I whispered, my voice now deeper, more growling. "This was never a costume." That's when Chloe screamed. I looked at my reflection in the basement window. The werewolf staring back wasn't wearing a mask anymore. It was me. Really me. The transformation was complete, and I could feel hunger rising in my chest, not for food, but for something else. Something warm. The other students backed away, but the app on everyone's phones began speaking in unison. "Thank you for participating in Trick or Treat. Tonight's harvest has been successful." I understood then. The app wasn't helping me find a party. It was helping something else find victims. And I wasn't the user anymore. I was the monster. The rest of that night, I try not to remember, but I can't forget the way my new claws felt, or how fast I could move, or the sounds that came from the basement before dawn. By morning, the Sigma Phi house was quiet. Too quiet. I woke up in the forest behind campus, naked and human again, with no memory of how I got there. The werewolf costume was gone. My phone showed no trace of the Trick or Treat app. When I got back to campus, there were missing person posters everywhere. 12 students from the party hadn't come home. The police questioned everyone, including me. "Just a normal Halloween party," I told them. I left early. Wasn't really my crowd. They believed me. After all, I was just the awkward kid who ate lunch alone. What could someone like me possibly do to the popular kids? But I know the truth. The app gave me everything I wanted. Friends, popularity, acceptance. The price was becoming something else when the moon was right. And every Halloween since then, that orange pumpkin icon appears on my phone again. Last year it helped me find another party. Made more friends. Had another wonderful night I try to forget. This year, Halloween is tomorrow. And I can already feel the app downloading itself again, ready to help me find new friends who will never see November. If a mysterious app ever appears on your phone promising to solve your problems, delete it immediately. Some solutions cost more than you're willing to pay. And sometimes when you finally get everything you've always wanted, you realize you've become something you never wanted to be. Fear doesn't always come dressed as a monster. Sometimes it comes disguised as your deepest wish, wearing the face of everyone you've ever wanted to impress.
The Whispering Trail. Have you ever followed a path that wasn't meant for you? I did, 6 months ago. And now I understand why some trails should never be walked alone. My name is Amelia, and I'm 27 years old. I used to love hiking, used to find peace in the wilderness. But after what happened in the Cascade Mountains, I can't even look at a forest without my hands starting to shake. It started as a simple weekend camping trip. My boyfriend Marcus had just broken up with me after 3 years together, claiming he needed space to find himself. I was devastated, angry, hurt, and desperate to get away from everything that reminded me of him. My sister Claire suggested I take a solo hiking trip to clear my head. "You always feel better in nature," she said. "Maybe some time alone in the mountains will help you figure things out." I chose the Cascade Range in Washington State, specifically a trail system near a small town called Pine Ridge. The area was known for its pristine wilderness and beautiful waterfalls. perfect for someone who needed to disappear for a few days. I arrived at the Pine Ridge Ranger Station on a Friday afternoon in late September. The ranger on duty, an older man with weathered skin and concerned eyes, looked up from his paperwork when I approached. "Hiking alone?" he asked, studying my permit application. "Just for the weekend. I'm an experienced hiker." He frowned slightly. "Which trails are you planning to take?" I showed him my map, pointing to the main hiking loop I'd researched online. It was a moderate difficulty trail that would take me past several waterfalls and scenic overlooks. The ranger's expression grew more serious. "Miss, I need to warn you about something. Stay on the marked trails. Don't follow any paths that aren't on your official map, no matter how inviting they look." "Why? What's the problem?" He hesitated, like he was deciding how much to tell me. "We've had incidents over the years. Hikers who followed unmarked trails and got lost. Some of them were never found." "I'll be careful," I promised. Though privately, I thought he was being overly dramatic. "There's something else," he said, lowering his voice. "If you hear voices calling your name from the forest, don't follow them. It's probably just your imagination, but better safe than sorry." I thanked him for the advice and headed to my campsite, thinking he was just one of those locals who enjoyed scaring tourists with ghost stories. The first day of hiking was perfect. The weather was crisp and clear, the fall colors were stunning, and the physical exertion helped me forget about Marcus and all the pain he'd caused. I felt like myself again for the first time in weeks. I made camp that evening near a small stream, cooked a simple dinner over my portable stove, and fell asleep to the sound of running water. It was exactly what I needed. But sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. Soft voices, just at the edge of hearing, coming from the direction of the forest. I couldn't make out words, but the tone sounded welcoming, like old friends calling me to join them. I unzipped my tent and listened carefully. The whispering stopped immediately, replaced by the normal sounds of night, owls hooting, leaves rustling, the stream babbling nearby. Probably just the wind, I told myself. Or maybe some other campers in the distance. The next morning I broke camp early and continued on the main trail. The hiking was more challenging that day, with several steep climbs and rocky sections. But the views were worth it. Sweeping vistas of pine-covered mountains stretching to the horizon. It was around noon when I first noticed the side trail. It wasn't on my map. A narrow dirt path branching off from the main trail, winding between tall pine trees and disappearing into shadows. Someone had placed small stone cairns along the path, marking the way. I remembered the ranger's warning about unmarked trails, but this one looked well maintained. The stone markers suggested it was an official path that just hadn't been included on my map. And there was something about it, something that drew me in. The way the sunlight filtered through the trees created beautiful patterns on the forest floor. The path seemed to promise something special, some hidden beauty that only adventurous hikers would discover. I stood at the junction for several minutes, torn between caution and curiosity. That's when I heard my name. Amelia. A woman's voice, soft and distant, coming from somewhere down the side trail. "Amelia, come see what we found." My heart started pounding. There was no one else around. I hadn't seen another hiker all day. But the voice sounded so real, so close. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" No response. Just the whisper of wind through the trees. I should have turned around. I should have followed the ranger's advice and stayed on the marked trail. But something about that voice, it sounded familiar. Like someone I knew, someone I cared about calling me to join them. Maybe it was another hiker who'd found something interesting and wanted to share it. Maybe they needed help. I stepped onto the side trail. The path was narrow but well-defined, winding between massive pine trees that blocked out most of the sunlight. The stone cairns appeared every few yards, clearly marking the route. After walking for about 10 minutes, I convinced myself this was a legitimate trail that had simply been left off my map. But the deeper I went into the forest, the stranger things became. The trees were wrong. Not diseased or damaged, but different. Their bark had an odd, almost metallic sheen. Their branches grew in patterns that hurt to look at, twisting and intersecting in ways that seemed to defy natural growth. And it was too quiet. No bird songs, no insect buzzing, no small animals rustling in the undergrowth. Just my footsteps on the soft earth and the sound of my own breathing. After another 15 minutes of walking, I came to a clearing. In the center stood a circle of 7 tall stones, each about 8 feet high and covered with symbols I didn't recognize. They weren't carved. The symbols seemed to be naturally occurring patterns in the rock, like fossils of some unknown language. And sitting on one of the stones was a woman. She looked to be about my age, with long brown hair and wearing hiking clothes similar to mine. She smiled and waved when she saw me, as if we were old friends meeting for lunch. "Amelia, I'm so glad you found us." Something about her felt familiar, but I couldn't place where I might have met her. "Do I know you?" She laughed, a sound like silver bells. "Of course you do. We've been waiting for you." We. That's when I noticed the others. 6 more people, sitting on the remaining stones. Men and women of various ages, all wearing hiking gear, all smiling at me with the same welcoming expression. "Who are you?" I asked, backing toward the trail. "We're hikers, just like you," said a man with a gray beard. "We found this place and decided to stay. It's so peaceful here." "How long have you been here?" The woman who'd first spoken tilted her head, as if the question confused her. "Time works differently in the forest. Does it matter?" I looked more closely at their hiking gear. The clothes looked old. Not worn out, but outdated. Styles from maybe 10 or 15 years ago. "I should get back to the main trail," I said. "My family will be worried if I don't check in." "Your family," repeated a younger man. "Marcus? You mean?" I froze. I'd never mentioned Marcus's name. I'd never mentioned having a boyfriend at all. "How do you know about Marcus?" The woman smiled sadly. "He hurt you, didn't he? Said he needed space. Made you feel like you weren't enough." "Stop," I whispered. "But you are enough, Amelia. You're perfect. That's why we chose you." I turned and ran back toward the trail, crashing through the undergrowth without caring about the noise I was making. Behind me, I heard laughter, not mocking, but delighted, like children who'd just played a wonderful joke. I ran until I found the main trail again, then kept running until I was completely out of breath. When I finally stopped to rest, I checked my GPS device. According to the GPS, I'd never left the main trail. The device showed my position as a straight line along the marked path, with no detours or side trips. But I knew what I'd experienced. The side trail, the stone circle, the 7 people, it had all been real. I decided to cut my hiking trip short and head back to my car. But when I tried to retrace my steps, I couldn't find the way back to my campsite. The trail seemed to loop back on itself, always leading me deeper into the forest instead of toward the parking area. As evening approached, I realized I was lost. That's when the voices started again. "Amelia! Come back to us, Amelia. You belong with us now." They were coming from every direction, surrounding me. Sometimes they sounded like the people I'd met in the clearing. Sometimes they sounded like Marcus, or my sister Claire, or my parents. "Please," I called out to the forest. "I just want to go home." The voices stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard footsteps approaching through the trees. The woman from the clearing stepped into view, still smiling that eerily welcoming smile. "You are home, Amelia. This is where you've always belonged. What do you want from me?" "We want you to join us, to stay with us forever. Doesn't that sound nice? No more heartbreak, no more loneliness, no more pain." She was right about the pain. The breakup with Marcus had left me feeling hollow, worthless. The idea of never having to feel that way again was tempting. "What happened to you?" I asked. "Were you hikers who got lost too?" Her smile faltered for just a moment. We were lost, yes, but then we found this place. We found peace. How long ago? Time. She began, then stopped. For the first time, she looked confused. I can't remember. It was autumn. The leaves were changing colors just like now. What year? She stared at me blankly, then shook her head as if clearing cobwebs. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you are here now. We can be happy together. I looked at her more closely. Her hiking clothes weren't just outdated. They were clean. Too clean. No dirt, no wear marks, no signs that she'd been living in the wilderness. And her eyes. There was something wrong with her eyes. They were too bright, too focused. Like someone who'd been staring at the same thing for so long they'd forgotten how to look at anything else. I need to think about it, I said carefully. She nodded. Of course. Take your time. We'll be waiting. She turned and walked back into the trees, disappearing into the shadows. I spent that night huddled against a large boulder, too terrified to sleep. Every time I started to doze off, I'd hear whispers calling my name from different directions. When dawn finally came, I tried once again to find my way back to civilization. But no matter which direction I walked, the trail always led me back to the stone circle. The 7 people were still there, sitting exactly where I'd left them. They smiled and waved as if I was returning from a brief errand. Ready to stay with us? Asked the woman. I don't understand what this place is, I said. Does it matter? Asked the bearded man. You're safe here. Protected. Loved. But I can't leave, can I? They exchanged glances. Finally, a middle-aged woman spoke up. Why would you want to leave? Everything you need is here. My family will look for me. Will they? The first woman tilted her head again. Marcus didn't look very hard when he decided to leave you. Your sister suggested this trip to get rid of you for a while. Your parents are too busy with their own lives to notice you're gone. Each word hit like a physical blow, because they contained just enough truth to hurt. You're lying. Am I? When was the last time any of them called you? When was the last time they made time for you without you asking first? I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. The breakup with Marcus had left me feeling isolated from everyone I cared about. Stay with us, she continued. We'll never leave you. We'll never hurt you. We'll never make you feel unwanted. It was exactly what I needed to hear. The promise of belonging, of never being abandoned again. I almost said yes. But then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the ground around the stone circle, partially hidden by fallen leaves, were personal items. Hiking boots, backpacks, water bottles, dozens of them. All weathered and old, as if they'd been there for years. Where are the other people? I asked. The ones who owned these things? The 7 people looked confused. What other people? The hikers who dropped these items. They followed my gaze to the scattered belongings, and for a moment, their expressions changed. They looked scared, lost, like they were trying to remember something important that kept slipping away. The woman began, then stopped. We don't... How many people have you convinced to stay with you? No one, she said quickly. Too quickly. Just us, just the 7 of us. But I could see the truth in their eyes now. They weren't the first group this place had trapped. They were just the most recent. What happens to the people who stay? They find peace, said the bearded man. But his voice sounded uncertain. Where are they now? Silence. I want to leave, I said firmly. The woman's welcoming expression cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. You can't leave us, Amelia. We need you. Why? Because... She struggled with the words. Because we're fading. We can feel ourselves disappearing, bit by bit. But when someone new comes, someone who belongs with us, we feel solid again, real again. You're not real. We are, she shouted. We were hikers just like you. We found this place and decided to explore, And then, she couldn't finish the sentence. And then you died, I said quietly. The words hung in the air like a physical thing. All 7 of them stared at me with expressions of dawning horror. We're not dead, whispered a young man. We can't be dead. We're talking to you. When did you die? I pressed. How long have you been trying to lure other hikers off the trail? We don't, the woman began, then stopped. Her form flickered, like a TV with bad reception. We don't remember. I need to leave. Please, she begged, and now her voice sounded hollow, distant. Please don't leave us alone. We've been alone for so long. I felt a stab of pity for her, but I forced myself to stay strong. You need to let go. You need to move on. We can't. This place won't let us. I looked around the clearing with new understanding. The stone circle wasn't just a random formation. It was a trap, a supernatural snare that caught souls and kept them, feeding off their energy and using them to lure more victims. What if I helped you leave? Hope flickered in their eyes. How? I didn't know, but I had to try something. Show me how you got here. Show me the trail you followed. The woman pointed toward a gap between the stones I hadn't noticed before. Through there. But we can't. We can't go back that way. Why not? It hurts, said the bearded man. Every time we try to leave, it feels like we're being torn apart. I walked to the gap between the stones. Beyond it, I could see a faint trail leading deeper into the forest. But there was something wrong with the space between the stones. It shimmered like heat waves, and looking at it too long made my eyes water. I'm going through, I announced. No, the woman cried. It'll trap you too. Maybe. Or maybe it only traps people who are already dead. Before I could lose my nerve, I stepped through the gap. The sensation was indescribable, like walking through spider webs made of electricity, or swimming through liquid darkness. For a moment, I felt myself being pulled in multiple directions, as if the space between the stones was trying to decide what to do with me. Then I was through, standing on the other side. I turned back to look at the 7 people. They were still sitting on their stones, but now they looked transparent, faded. Come on, I called to them. You can do this. The woman stood up slowly, her form flickering. I'm scared. I know, but you have to try. She walked toward the gap, each step making her more translucent. When she reached the barrier between the stones, she stopped. I can't, she whispered. Yes, you can. You just have to let go of this place. But if we let go, what if there's nothing after? What if this is all we have? Then you'll find out together, I said. All 7 of you. You won't be alone. She looked back at the others, who had all stood up and were walking toward the gap. Together? She asked. Together. One by one, they stepped through the barrier. Each passage was like watching someone dissolve and reform, but they made it. All 7 of them, standing with me on the other side of the stone circle. Now what? Asked the bearded man. Now you let go completely. I don't know how I knew what to do next. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something the forest itself was telling me. But I reached out and took the woman's hand. Her skin felt like cool mist. Think about the people you left behind, I told them. Think about saying goodbye. My daughter, the woman whispered. I never said goodbye to my daughter. My wife, said the bearded man. She's probably still waiting for me to come home. One by one, they began to remember. Not just their lives, but their deaths. The storm that caught them unprepared. The fall that broke bones and left them dying slowly in the wilderness. The exposure that claimed them one by one, until only their spirits remained, trapped by the stone circle's malevolent influence. We can go now, the woman said, and her voice sounded peaceful for the first time. We can finally go home. They began to fade, but not with the flickering uncertainty of before. This was a gentle dissolution, like mist evaporating in sunlight. Thank you, the woman said, as her form became almost invisible. "Thank you for helping us remember." And then they were gone. I stood alone in the forest, on a trail that now led clearly back to the main hiking path. The stone circle was still there, but it looked different now. Just 7 ordinary rocks with no supernatural power. I made it back to my car before sunset, driving home in a daze. It wasn't until the next day that I thought to research the history of the area. 7 hikers had gone missing in those mountains 15 years ago. A group of friends on a weekend camping trip, caught in an early blizzard. Their bodies were never found, and the search was eventually called off. Their names matched the descriptions of the people I'd met in the clearing. I never told anyone the full story of what happened. Who would believe it? But I kept thinking about what the woman had said, about being alone for so long, about fading away bit by bit. Sometimes I wonder how many other places like that exist. Supernatural traps scattered through the wilderness, powered by loneliness and fear, fed by the souls of people who died feeling abandoned. And I think about all the hikers who go missing every year. How many of them are still out there, trapped in places like the Stone Circle, slowly forgetting who they used to be? If you ever find yourself on an unmarked trail, following voices that sound like people you know, remember my story. Remember that some paths lead nowhere you want to go. But also remember that even the lost can find their way home, if someone cares enough to help them remember who they used to be. The deepest horror isn't in the darkness that surrounds us. It's in the loneliness that follows us wherever we go, until someone finally shows us the way back to the light.
The man in the black tuxedo. I need to tell you about Halloween night, 2019. About the man who came to my door in a perfect black tuxedo. And why I can never answer my doorbell on October 31st again. Because some trick-or-treaters never leave. My name is Alex, and I was 19 when it happened. Old enough to stay home alone. Old enough to handle myself. Or so I thought. My parents had gone to their company's annual Halloween party at the Marriott downtown. Dad looked ridiculous in his vampire costume, and Mom kept adjusting her witch hat in the hallway mirror before they left. "We'll be back by midnight," Mom said, checking her purse for the 3rd time. "There's leftover pizza in the fridge, and don't forget to give out candy if any trick-or-treaters show up." "I'm 19, Mom. I think I can handle passing out Snickers bars." She kissed my forehead. "Lock the doors after we leave, okay? It's Halloween night. Lots of weirdos out there." If only she'd known how right she was. After they left, I settled onto the couch with a bag of the good candy, the stuff we were supposed to save for trick-or-treaters. I was binge-watching horror movies on Netflix, feeling pretty good about having the whole house to myself. Our neighborhood wasn't the kind that got many trick-or-treaters anymore. Most of the families had moved to the newer developments across town, where the houses were closer together, and the sidewalks actually had streetlights. Our street was older, darker, the kind of place where porch lights barely reached the sidewalk. Around 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I paused the movie, grabbed the candy bowl, and headed for the front door. Through the peephole, I could see a figure standing on our porch. Tall, perfectly still, wearing what looked like a formal black tuxedo. "Weird costume choice," I muttered, unlocking the deadbolt. But when I opened the door, he wasn't a kid. He was a man, maybe in his 30s, with pale skin and dark hair slicked back perfectly. His tuxedo looked expensive, real expensive, like something you'd wear to a wedding or a funeral. "Trick or treat," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. I stared at him, confused. Aren't you a little old for trick-or-treating?" He tilted his head slightly, studying me with eyes that seemed too dark for the porch light. "Age is just a number, don't you think?" Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl, but I didn't want to be rude. Maybe he was mentally disabled, or just eccentric. So I held out the candy bowl. "Sure, man. Take whatever you want." Instead of reaching for candy, he stepped closer. That's when I noticed something that made my blood freeze. In his right hand, barely visible against the black fabric of his tuxedo, was a kitchen knife. The blade caught the porch light, gleaming like a silver smile. "Actually," he said, his voice still eerily calm, "I'm not here for candy." I tried to slam the door shut, but he was faster. His foot shot out, blocking it from closing. We struggled for a moment, me pushing against the door, him pushing back with inhuman strength. "Let me in," he said, and now there was something wrong with his voice. It was layered, like multiple people speaking at once. "It's Halloween night. Don't you want to play? Get the hell away from my house," I screamed, throwing my full weight against the door. For a moment, I thought I had him. The door started to close, but then he laughed. It was the most horrible sound I'd ever heard. Not human laughter, something else. Something hungry. "That's not how the game works," he said. "On Halloween night, I get to come inside." I managed to get the door closed and locked, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the deadbolt. My heart was hammering against my ribs as I stumbled backward into the living room. Outside, I could hear him walking around the house. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling the perimeter, testing windows, trying door handles. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my fingers slipping on the screen. 911, what's your emergency? "There's a man. He's trying to break into my house. He has a knife." "Okay, sir, I need you to stay calm. What's your address?" I gave them our address, whispering even though I knew he couldn't hear me through the walls. "Please hurry, there's something wrong with him." "Officers are on their way. Stay on the line with me, okay? Are you somewhere safe in the house?" "I think so. I'm in the living room, and all the doors are locked." That's when the lights went out. The whole house plunged into darkness, and the phone line went dead. Not just my cell phone. Everything. The digital clocks, the Wi-Fi router, even the refrigerator stopped humming. In the silence that followed, I heard it. The sound of glass breaking somewhere in the back of the house. He was inside. I fumbled around in the dark until I found my dad's old baseball bat in the hall closet. It wasn't much, but it made me feel slightly less helpless. I crept toward the kitchen, following the sound of footsteps. The back door was standing wide open, cool October air flowing through the house. And there, silhouetted against the dim light from the neighbor's porch, was the man in the black tuxedo. He was just standing there, perfectly still, like he was waiting for something. "I can smell your fear," he said without turning around. "It's delicious." "What do you want?" I whispered, gripping the bat tighter. He turned slowly, and in the faint light, I could see his face clearly for the first time. It was wrong. All wrong. His features were too sharp, too angular, like someone had tried to carve a human face from marble and gotten the proportions slightly off. And his eyes, they weren't reflecting any light at all. They were black holes in his skull. "I want to play," he said, and when he smiled, I saw that his teeth were too long, too sharp. "Halloween is my favorite night, when the veil is thin, when things like me can come out and play." "Things like you?" "Oh, Alex," he said, and hearing my name from his lips made my skin crawl. "Haven't you figured it out yet? I'm not human. Never was." He started walking toward me, his movements too fluid, too graceful, like he was floating rather than walking. Every Halloween night, I get to choose one house, one person to play with, and this year, I chose you. I ran. No plan, no strategy, just pure animal panic driving me through the dark house. Behind me, I could hear his laughter echoing off the walls, multiplying until it sounded like a whole crowd was chasing me. I made it to the staircase and took the steps 3 at a time, the baseball bat cluttering against the banister. My parents' bedroom was at the end of the hall. They had a lock on the door and a phone by the bed. But as I reached for the door handle, a hand grabbed my ankle. He had followed me up the stairs without making a sound. His grip was ice cold and impossibly strong, like being grabbed by a corpse. I swung the bat down at his head, connecting with a sickening crack. He didn't even flinch. "My turn," he said, wrenching the bat from my hands and tossing it aside like it was made of plastic. I scrambled into my parents' room and slammed the door, fumbling for the lock in the darkness. The landline phone was dead too, just static when I picked up the receiver. Outside the door I could hear him, but not footsteps. Scratching, like he was clawing at the wood with his fingernails. "Alex," he called through the door, his voice sing-song now like a parent calling a child for dinner. "Come out and play. The game isn't over yet." The scratching got louder, more frantic. I pressed my back against the far wall, staring at the door in terror. Whatever he was doing out there, it was working. I could see wood shavings falling from the door frame. That's when I noticed something else. The bedroom window was open. Just a crack, but it was open. And outside I could hear sirens getting closer. Hope flared in my chest. The police were coming. I just had to hold out a little longer. The door exploded inward. He stood in the doorway, no longer looking even remotely human. His tuxedo was torn and dirty, his pale skin had taken on a grayish hue, and his fingers had grown into long black claws. "Found you," he whispered. But before he could take another step, red and blue lights flooded through the bedroom window. The police had arrived. The effect on him was immediate and dramatic. He screamed, not with his voice, but with something deeper, more primal. The sound of rage and frustration and hunger all mixed together. "This isn't over," he snarled, his form already starting to blur around the edges. "Halloween comes every year, Alex, and I never forget a face." He dissolved into shadow, flowing out through the broken door like smoke. By the time the police reached the second floor, he was gone. The police found evidence of the break-in, the shattered back door, claw marks on the walls, the destroyed bedroom door. But no fingerprints, no DNA, no trace of whoever or whatever had been in our house. Detective Morrison, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, took my statement while paramedics checked me for injuries. "Can you describe the intruder?" she asked, pen poised over her notepad. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, wearing a black tuxedo, dark hair, pale skin. But detective, there was something wrong with him. Something not human. She nodded patiently, the way adults nod when children tell them about monsters under the bed. Trauma can make people seem different, more threatening. The mind plays tricks. His eyes were completely black, and his fingers, they turned into claws. "Alex," she said gently, "you've been through something terrifying. It's natural for your memory to exaggerate certain details, but I knew what I'd seen. And when they showed me the claw marks gouged deep into the bedroom door, wood that would take superhuman strength to damage." Detective Morrison got very quiet. My parents came home to a house full of police cars and crime scene tape. Mom cried when she saw me, and Dad spent the next 3 hours on the phone with security companies, scheduling installations for the following day. "We're not leaving you alone again," Mom said, holding me tight despite the fact that I was 19 years old. "Not until they catch whoever did this." But I knew they never would. Because how do you catch something that isn't human? Something that only comes out on Halloween night? A year passed. We moved to a new house across town, installed a state-of-the-art security system, and I started seeing a therapist to deal with what everyone called the break-in. But as October approached again, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting, watching. On Halloween night, my parents wanted to go to another company party. I begged them to stay home. Alex, honey, Mom said gently, you can't live in fear forever. The police said it was probably just a drug addict looking for things to steal. Lightning doesn't strike twice. What if it does? Dad put his hand on my shoulder. We've got cameras now. Motion sensors. If anyone comes within 50 feet of this house, the alarm goes off, and the police are notified automatically. You'll be fine. They left around 8 o'clock. I locked every door, checked every window, and settled in front of the TV to wait out the night. At exactly 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I froze, staring at the front door through the security camera monitor. The porch was empty, but the doorbell was definitely ringing. Then I saw him. He stepped into view of the camera, adjusting his black tuxedo jacket like he just arrived at a formal event. He looked exactly the same as he had the year before, except now he was smiling directly at the camera. "Hello, Alex," he said, his voice somehow coming through the intercom system. "Miss me?" The lights went out. The security system died with a electronic whine, and in the darkness I heard the sound I'd been dreading for a year. The front door opening. "I told you I never forget a face," his voice drifted through the house. "Halloween comes every year, and so do I. That was 5 years ago. I have moved 7 times since then. Different states, different names, different lives. But every Halloween night, he finds me. It doesn't matter how far I run or how well I hide." At 9 o'clock on October 31st, the doorbell rings. The lights go out, and he comes inside to play his game. I've learned his rules now. He never actually kills me. That would end the game. Instead, he hunts me through whatever house I'm living in, terrorizing me for hours before disappearing at dawn. It's his entertainment, his annual tradition. The therapists say I'm having episodes, hallucinations brought on by trauma and stress. They prescribe pills that don't work and suggest treatments that can't help. Because how do you treat someone who's being stalked by something that shouldn't exist? Last Halloween, I tried something different. I left town completely, booked a hotel room 3 states away under a fake name. Thought maybe distance would break whatever connection he had to me. At 9 o'clock, the hotel room door opened. "Nice try, Alex," he said, straightening his perfect black tuxedo. "But Halloween is my night. And you're my favorite toy. I've stopped running now. What's the point? This Halloween, I'm staying home. I've got cameras set up, recording equipment, everything I need to document what happens. Maybe if I can prove he exists, maybe someone will believe me. Maybe someone will help me break free from this nightmare. Or maybe I'll just have better footage of my own terror. Either way, he's coming tonight. In exactly 47 minutes, the doorbell will ring at 9 o'clock sharp. The lights will go out, and the man in the black tuxedo will come inside to play. If your doorbell rings on Halloween night, and no one's there when you look outside, don't open the door. Because some trick-or-treaters don't want candy. They want something much more precious. And once they choose you, Halloween never ends.
The pumpkin patch. I should have known something was wrong when Mrs. Henderson offered me $50 an hour to watch her pumpkin patch. Nobody pays that much for a simple Halloween job, but I needed the money for my mom's medical bills. My name's Sarah, and I'm 22, working 2 jobs while going to community college. I live with my mom in a small town called Millfield, where everyone knows everyone, and the biggest excitement is usually the annual Halloween festival. I'm the type who always says yes when people need help, probably too trusting for my own good. Mom always tells me I'm too naive, that I need to be more careful. She was right. It started 3 days before Halloween. Mrs. Henderson knocked on our door that Tuesday evening, her gray hair perfectly styled, wearing that fake smile she always wore at church. "Sarah, dear," she said, I need someone to watch my pumpkin patch at night, just until after Halloween. The kids have been troublesome lately. The offer seemed too good to be true. $50 an hour, from sunset to sunrise, just to sit in a chair and make sure no one stole pumpkins. Mom was having her chemotherapy treatments, and we were drowning in hospital bills. I said yes before I could think twice. The Henderson farm sat about 2 miles outside town, surrounded by cornfields that rustled in the wind like whispered secrets. The pumpkin patch covered maybe an acre. Dozens of perfect orange pumpkins scattered across dark soil. Mrs. Henderson showed me around that first evening, her weathered hands gesturing at the neat rows. "Just watch from the chair by the scarecrow," she said, pointing to an old wooden chair positioned next to a tall, raggedy figure stuffed with straw. "You see anyone at all, ring this bell 3 times. She handed me an old brass bell, tarnished and heavy. "I'll come running." The first night was peaceful. I brought my textbooks, planning to study between glances at the patch. The scarecrow stood silent beside me, its burlap face stitched into a crooked smile. Around midnight, I heard something. Children laughing in the distance. But when I looked toward the sound, the cornfields were empty, just stalks swaying in the breeze. I figured it was kids from town, maybe planning some Halloween mischief. I didn't ring the bell. The second night, things got stranger. I arrived just as the sun was setting, painting the pumpkins a deeper orange. The scarecrow seemed different somehow, closer to my chair than before. I must have been imagining things. But I swear its head was turned slightly toward me, instead of facing the field. Around 1 a.m., I heard the laughter again, closer this time. I stood up, squinting into the darkness between the pumpkin rows. That's when I saw them, small figures moving between the pumpkins, barely visible in the moonlight. Children, maybe 5 or 6 of them, crawling on their hands and knees like they were playing some kind of game. "Hey," I called out. "You kids need to get out of here." They stopped moving, all at once, like someone had pressed pause on a video. Then, slowly, they all turned to look at me. Even from a distance, I could see their faces were wrong. Too pale, too still. Their eyes reflected the moonlight like animals. I grabbed the bell, my hands shaking, but before I could ring it, they were gone. Just vanished into the darkness. I spent the rest of the night with every nerve on edge, but nothing else happened. The third night, Halloween night, I almost didn't go. Mom was feeling better after her treatment, and she begged me to stay home. "Something doesn't feel right about this, Sarah," she said. "Mrs. Henderson never needed anyone to watch that patch before. But we needed the money, and it was just one more night." I arrived as usual, but something was definitely different. The scarecrow was facing my chair now, its stitched smile seeming wider somehow. And the pumpkins. God, the pumpkins looked different. Bigger, more orange, almost glowing in the fading light. Mrs. Henderson was waiting for me, wringing her hands nervously. "Tonight's the last night, dear," she said. "After tonight, everything will be finished." She left me alone with the bell and that horrible scarecrow. The children came earlier this time, just after full darkness fell. But they weren't hiding anymore. They walked upright through the pumpkin patch, and I could see them clearly now. 5 kids, all around 10 years old, all wearing old-fashioned Halloween costumes that looked decades out of date. A ghost with yellowed sheets, a witch with a crooked hat, a pirate with an eye patch, a vampire with plastic fangs, a devil with rubber horns. They moved in a straight line toward my chair, their faces blank and expressionless. Their eyes never blinked. I should have rung the bell. I should have run. But I was frozen, watching them approach with growing horror. The ghost child spoke first, its voice hollow and echoing. "We've been waiting." "Waiting for what?" I whispered. "For you to join us," said the witch child, tilting its head at an unnatural angle. "In the patch, forever and ever. That's when I noticed the scarecrow beside me had moved. Its burlap head was turned completely around now, facing me, and its stitched smile had somehow become a frown. Its straw-stuffed arms were reaching toward me. I jumped up from the chair and ran. Behind me I heard children's laughter, not joyful but cold and hungry. The sound followed me as I stumbled through the cornfield, branches whipping at my face, my phone's flashlight beam dancing wildly ahead of me. I made it to my car and drove straight home, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The next morning, I went back to get my textbooks and tell Mrs. Henderson I was quitting. But when I arrived at the farm, police cars were everywhere. Officers were walking through the pumpkin patch, taking photos and measurements. I approached one of the deputies. "What happened here?" He looked at me strangely. "You're Sarah Mitchell, right? Mrs. Henderson said you were the last person to see her alive." My blood turned to ice. "See her alive? What do you mean?" "She's been dead for 3 weeks, miss. Neighbor found her body this morning, buried in the pumpkin patch. Coroner says she's been underground since early October." I stared at him, my mind reeling. "That's impossible. She hired me 3 days ago. I talked to her yesterday evening." The deputy's face went pale. "Miss, that can't be right. Mrs. Henderson's been missing for weeks. Her family's been looking for her." I walked past him into the pumpkin patch, my legs feeling like jelly. The chair was still there, next to the scarecrow. But now I could see what I'd missed before. There weren't 5 pumpkins near the scarecrow. There were 6. And they were arranged in a perfect circle around a patch of freshly turned earth. On each pumpkin, someone had carved a face. A ghost, a witch, a pirate, a vampire, a devil. And the 6th pumpkin, the one that hadn't been there 3 days ago, had my face carved into it. My exact face, down to the small scar on my chin from when I fell off my bike as a kid. I backed away slowly, and that's when I saw the scarecrow clearly for the first time. It wasn't stuffed with straw at all. Through tears in the old clothes, I could see gray hair, weathered hands, and that fake smile I knew so well. Mrs. Henderson had been the scarecrow all along. The deputy was calling my name, but I couldn't hear him over the sound of children laughing somewhere in the cornfield. They were still there, waiting. And now they had what they wanted. A new friend to play with forever. I never went back to that farm. We moved to another town within the week, telling everyone that Mom needed to be closer to her doctors. But sometimes, on Halloween night, I still hear children laughing outside my window. And I know they're still waiting for me to come back and take my place in their circle. If someone ever offers you easy money for a job that seems too good to be true, trust your instincts. Some places aren't looking for workers. They're looking for volunteers who'll never leave. Fear doesn't always wear a mask on Halloween. Sometimes it wears the face of someone you trust, leading you exactly where it needs you to go.
Disturbing mythical creatures you've never heard of. The thing that wore my face. My name is Nathan, and I'm 32 years old. 3 days ago, I thought I was losing my mind. Now I know the truth is so much worse than madness. It started on Halloween night, which I know sounds like a cliché. But some clichés exist because they're rooted in something real, something that knows when we're most vulnerable to believing in the impossible. I live alone in a small town called Cedar Falls, Oregon, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and nothing exciting ever happens. I work at the local hardware store, go to the same bar every Friday, and lead the most ordinary life you can imagine. But this Halloween was different. I'd been feeling off for weeks leading up to it. Not sick exactly, but disconnected. Like I was watching my own life from the outside. My coworkers noticed it too. "You okay, Nathan?" my boss Jerry asked on Halloween morning. "You seem, I don't know, different lately." I laughed it off. "Just tired. Haven't been sleeping well." That was true. For the past month, I'd been having the strangest dreams. Dreams where I was walking through my house at night, but everything was slightly wrong. The furniture was in different places, the walls were the wrong color, and when I tried to turn on the lights, nothing would happen. In these dreams, I'd eventually find myself standing in front of my bathroom mirror, but the person looking back at me, it wasn't quite right. Same face, same eyes, same everything, but something fundamental was different, like looking at a photograph that had been subtly altered. Halloween evening, I decided to stay home and hand out candy to trick-or-treaters. I'd bought bags of fun-sized chocolate bars and settled in to watch horror movies, the irony of which isn't lost on me now. The first few hours were normal. Kids in costumes came to the door. Pirates, princesses, superheroes. I gave them candy, complimented their outfits, and went back to my movie. But around 9 o'clock, the trick-or-treaters stopped coming. The street went quiet, unusually quiet for Halloween night. That's when I heard the knock at my back door. Not the front door where all the kids had been coming. The back door that opens onto my small backyard, hidden from the street by a tall wooden fence. I muted the TV and listened. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Knock. 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 I walked to the kitchen and peered through the window. In the dim light from my porch lamp, I could see a figure standing at my back door. Tall, wearing dark clothes, but I couldn't make out any details. "Can I help you?" I called through the door. No response. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door, keeping the chain latch engaged. The person standing on my back porch was me. Not someone who looked like me. Not a twin or a doppelganger. It was me, down to the small scar on my chin from a childhood accident, and the way my hair cowlicks on the left side. "Hello, Nathan," my double said in my exact voice. I slammed the door shut and fumbled with the locks, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the deadbolt. This wasn't possible. I was losing my mind. Stress from work, too many horror movies, not enough sleep. There had to be a logical explanation. I grabbed my phone to call someone, anyone, but who would believe this? And what would I even say? The knocking started again, but now it was coming from the front door. I crept to the living room window and peered through the blinds. Standing under my porch light, smiling and waving at the window, was another me. This one was wearing the exact same clothes I was wearing, jeans and a gray sweater. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my own name and number. With trembling fingers, I answered the call. "Hi, Nathan," my voice said through the phone. "Can you let me in? I'm getting cold out here." "What do you want?" I whispered. "I want what's mine. You've been living my life for long enough. I don't understand." "Don't you? Haven't you felt it? The disconnection, the dreams, the sense that something isn't quite right? That's because you don't belong in this life anymore." I hung up and backed away from the window, but the figure outside just smiled and waved again. That's when I realized there were more of them. Looking out my side window, I could see myself standing in my neighbor's yard. And across the street, another me was walking slowly down the sidewalk. In the distance, at least 3 more figures that looked exactly like me were scattered around the neighborhood. All of them were converging on my house. I ran upstairs to my bedroom and locked the door, then called the police. "Cedar Falls Police, what's your emergency?" "Someone's trying to break into my house. Multiple people. They're surrounding my property." "We'll send a unit right away. Can you describe the intruders?" How could I describe them? They look like me. A pause. "Sir, are you saying the intruders resemble you or?" "They are me. Exact copies. I know how that sounds, but..." "Sir, have you been drinking tonight? Taking any medications?" "No. I'm completely sober. Please, Just send someone. A unit is en route. Stay on the line with me. I kept the dispatcher on the phone while I watched from my bedroom window. The multiple versions of myself had formed a loose circle around my house. They weren't trying to break in anymore, just standing there, waiting. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, I watched from upstairs as two officers got out of their patrol car and looked around the empty yard. The other versions of me had vanished. "Sir, we don't see anyone out here," the dispatcher relayed. "The officers are going to do a perimeter check, but there's no sign of intruders." I went downstairs and opened the front door as the officers approached. "Mr. Henderson?" one of them said. "We got a call about intruders?" They were here. At least 6 people who looked exactly like me. The officers exchanged glances. "Have you been under any stress lately? Any personal issues we should know about?" I know how this sounds, but I'm not crazy. They were here. After 20 minutes of questioning and searching my property, the officers left. They were polite, but clearly thought I was having some kind of breakdown. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my bedroom, afraid to sleep. Every sound made me jump. The house settling, the wind in the trees, a neighbor's dog barking. But nothing else happened. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it had all been a stress-induced hallucination. Halloween night, too much caffeine, too many scary movies. It made sense. I went to work as usual, determined to act normal. But Jerry pulled me aside within an hour. "Nathan, I'm concerned about you. You look different today." "Different how?" He studied my face carefully. "I can't put my finger on it. Just different. Maybe you should take the day off." I insisted I was fine, but throughout the day, customers and coworkers kept giving me strange looks. Like they recognized me, but something was off. During my lunch break, I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked exactly the same as always, but Jerry was right. There was something different. Not in my features, but in something deeper. The way I held my face, maybe. Or the look in my eyes. That evening, I was walking to my car after work when I saw him again. Another me standing across the street in the parking lot of the diner. This time I didn't run. I walked directly toward him. As I got closer, I could see he was perfect. Not just similar, perfect. Every freckle, every line, every imperfection was exactly right. "You're not me," I said when I was close enough to speak normally. "Aren't I?" he replied. "Look at me carefully, Nathan. Really look." I did, and what I saw made my blood run cold. He was more me than I was. Everything about him was like a perfected version of myself. His posture was better, his clothes fit better, his smile was more natural. He looked like what I would look like if I was completely comfortable in my own skin. "What are you?" "I'm you, the real you. You're just a practice run." "That's impossible." "Is it? Haven't you felt disconnected from your own life lately? Like you're wearing a costume that doesn't quite fit? That's because you've been living in a space that was never meant for you." I backed away, but he followed. "I know what you're thinking," he continued. "You think I'm some kind of monster, some evil twin trying to steal your life. But that's not what this is. You were never meant to exist, Nathan. You're a mistake. A glitch in reality that needs to be corrected." "You're lying." "Am I? Think about your earliest memory. Really think about it." I tried to remember being a child, playing in my backyard, starting school. But the memories felt thin, like echoes of someone else's experiences. "You don't have early memories because you didn't exist then," he said. "You came into being about 6 months ago. When reality started to tear at the edges, you're a copy that became self-aware, but you don't belong in this timeline. No. The dreams you've been having? Those are glimpses of the real world. The world where I exist and you don't. Every night, reality tries to correct itself, but you keep fighting it." He was right about the dreams. The house that looked almost like mine, but not quite. That was his house. The reflection that wasn't quite right. That was him looking back at me through a crack in reality. What happens to me if you take my place? You go back to not existing, which is where you belong. But I don't want to disappear. I know. No one wants to stop existing, but you're causing problems by being here. Haven't you noticed how people react to you lately? They can sense something's wrong. You're like a virus in their reality, and their minds are trying to reject you. I thought about Jerry's reaction, the strange looks from customers, the feeling that I was becoming invisible even when people were looking directly at me. How long do I have? Not long. The longer you exist, the more damage you cause to the fabric of reality. Eventually, it will snap back violently, and everyone in this timeline will be affected. So I just let you take over. You don't have a choice. I'm not the only one, Nathan. There are dozens of us now, maybe hundreds, all the correct versions of people who were accidentally duplicated when reality started to fracture. We're all coming home. That's when I understood what I'd seen on Halloween night. Not multiple copies of me, but other people's correct versions. The real versions of my neighbors, all returning to claim their proper places in reality. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're not just some monster trying to trick me? Because, he said, pulling out his wallet, I have all your memories. Your real memories. He showed me a photo I'd never seen before. It was me as a child, maybe 8 years old, standing with parents I didn't recognize. But looking at the photo, I felt a sudden rush of warmth and belonging. These people loved me. I could feel it. Those are your real parents, he said. In the reality where you belong. The memories you have of growing up here, those belong to someone else. You stole them without realizing it when you came into existence. I started crying then because I could feel the truth of what he was saying. The memories I'd been living with felt hollow compared to the surge of recognition I felt looking at that photograph. I don't want to hurt anyone, I said. I know. You're not evil, Nathan. You're just lost. But staying lost is hurting people. Every day you exist here, you're stealing experiences that belong to someone else. What do I have to do? Just stop fighting. Stop trying to hold on to this reality. Let yourself remember who you really are and where you really belong. I closed my eyes and tried to relax. Tried to stop clinging to this life that never really belonged to me. And suddenly, I could remember. A different childhood with loving parents who taught me how to fish and helped me with homework. A different high school, where I was popular and confident. A different job in a different town, where I was respected and valued. That was my real life. This place, these people, this Nathan, it was all a shadow of someone else's existence. Ready? He asked gently. I nodded. The transition was like waking up from a dream. One moment I was standing in a parking lot in Cedar Falls, Oregon, looking at a perfect copy of myself. The next moment, I was in my real bedroom in my real house, with sunlight streaming through windows I actually remembered choosing the curtains for. I looked in my mirror and saw myself. Really myself. Not the hollow imitation I'd been living as, but the complete person I was meant to be. I've been back in my real life for 3 days now. Everything fits perfectly. My job, my friends, my memories, it all makes sense in a way it never did before. But sometimes, late at night, I think about the other Nathan. The one who was living my shadow life in Cedar Falls. He wasn't evil, just lost. And I wonder how many other shadows people are out there, living borrowed lives without realizing it. If you've been feeling disconnected from your own life lately, if nothing feels quite right, if people look at you strangely, if your memories feel thin, maybe you should start asking yourself some questions. Maybe the life you're living was never meant to be yours. The most terrifying monsters aren't the ones that try to destroy us. They're the ones that show us we were never supposed to exist in the first place.